Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our little lore playthrough slash reading some emails of Death Stranding. We just finished the story in the last part, so if you haven't watched that, what are you doing here? Basically the emails and stuff, it's just stuff pertaining to quests and stuff we did. The real juicy stuff is here in the data, in the interviews, in fact. So we're just going to go down and everything we haven't already read, we're just gonna have a little look-see at this because this world is big and vast and lovely. If you missed the previous entry where we were talking about lore and stuff, it is number 21. If that is incorrect, there'll be a big old text on the screen right now because I was not prepared. I've just gone and wiped my eyes, put it that way, after the last episode, so I'm a bit unprepared and maybe you'll forgive me. But yes, so we got a couple interviews left to read here. This one's from die-hardman, this first one. The terrorist view of bridges, from 3 years ago. The first expedition set off without any problems. Both the advance party and the rear guard are en route to the west coast as we speak. They haven't reported any trouble with terrorists and the like yet, but the further out they get, the greater the danger. There's a hell of a lot of separatists out there who want nothing to do with the UCA. Some are more extreme than others, perhaps, but there's no denying where they stand. Seems like just yesterday it was only ideological differences, strongly held opinions at worst, but then Kyrillium started messing with people's heads, turning extremists into demons, mules into gestalt, and debate into violence. And now we're headed west, into their territory. Invaders coming for their freedom. They're waiting for us, minds made up and guns in hand. Amelie and the others aren't looking for a fight. She's going to try to talk sense to people, convince them to join us. If all the cities sign on, our nation could rise again. No one wants to take anything from these people, only give them back what was lost. If only they could understand that. Locked in syndrome. So it's been decided that Amelie will lead the expedition. In terms of talent and temperament, it was only ever going to be her or Sam Strand. But we don't know where Sam is, which made the decision easy. Besides, there's no denying she's special. Amelie was born on the beach. Or rather, her physical body, her Ha, that was born into this world, while her spiritual essence, her Ka, was born on the beach. Medically speaking, they weren't sure what to call it. In the end, they settled on a diagnosis similar to what's known as locked-in syndrome. A condition where the subject is mentally present, but physically unable to move their body, except for their eyes sometimes. The president was able to communicate with Amelie's soul on the beach, but her body remained as it was when she was born. But after a time, thanks mainly to the president's efforts, she began to show progress. Amelie's physical and spiritual selves gradually came together, and her body began to develop normally. It was right about then that they realised that she was also a doomed sufferer and began to ascertain her incredible abilities. She can transport herself physically to her own beach. Guess it makes sense. That world is more real to her than this one. She may have overcome her initial struggles, but she still spent most of her life on the other side. And over there, time stands still, which is why even now she looks like she's in her 20s. Eventually, the president came to feel that her daughter had been through it enough. From that point onward, all communication with Amelie would be via hologram. Even during the expedition, she wouldn't be in direct contact with most of the team. It's not a bad plan, to be fair. It'll help to keep her out of reach of terrorists, for a start. This, all we know, is a lie, of course, because Amelie and Bridget were the same person. Dead man. Human sacrifices under London Bridge. 6 months ago. Before I joined Bridges, I watched an old movie called My Fair Lady. It's about a flower girl, Eliza, a real cockney from old London. She meets this professor, and he trains her to speak and act like a high-class lady. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Anyway, I heard that My Fair Lady might have something to do with London Bridge. You know the song, right? They start out trying to build it back up with wood and clay, and they finish with gold and silver. There was a reading of the film that said Eliza symbolised the bridge, or something along those lines. But that reminds me of a far more sinister theory, that the fair lady in that song is actually an enumerament. A sacrifice burned alive in the foundations of the bridge to keep it standing. God only knows if there's any truth to it. Oh, and have you seen The Shape of Water? Not a Del Toro film. The Shape of Water is not a Del Toro film. It's another movie with a heroine named Eliza, but this Eliza can't speak. She's mute. But it's not about teaching the girl to behave properly. It's just a good old-fashioned love story. If you get the chance, you should definitely check it out. I enjoyed The Shape of Water. What else we got? This one's from Hartman. Cave paintings and stencils. Cave paintings provide an invaluable window into the lives of our ancestors, how they lived, what they experienced. Some have been preserved here on our continent, although most have sadly been lost in void-outs. The oldest cave paintings of all are believed to date back 64,800 years or more. But all of these are, or perhaps were, in Europe. What's become of them, I wonder? Have they too been obliterated in annihilation events? If not, are the caves containing them now infested with BTs? Does Europe still exist, even? One cannot help but worry that these vital records have been forever lost to us. But I digress. These first paintings were likely made by the Neanderthals. They were crude depictions of creatures such as deer, bison, and horses, interspersed with stenciled outlines of large hands. Some assert that these are the signatures of primeval painters. But could they not have also been depictions of BT handprints? Could our ancient relatives have been trying to tell us something? Or issue a warning? Or is that perhaps one flight of fancy too far? BTs and void-outs. The following conclusions are largely derived from a handful of eyewitness accounts. While I would advise anyone to take them with a grain of salt, I still believe they are worth sharing. BTs pursue their prey through a multi-step process. In the first, they begin searching for a target. The handprints left behind is evidence of this behaviour. Upon detection, one or more BTs will attempt to seize their target and drag it towards a much larger entity. To clarify, however, a void-out does not occur at the point of contact between the giant and the human, but only once the human has been subsumed into the giant's body. We think this may be because this is the only place where antimatter is present within the entity. It goes without saying that BTs are entirely different from any creature that is of this world, and we have much to learn about them still. One thing is for certain, however, we must come to understand them, else we may never overcome the existential threat that they pose. I was never eaten by a BT, so I don't actually know what happens. My only death that wasn't part of the story was from falling down a cliff. So I never saw what happened when you actually cause a void out. Because I fell down a cliff and I didn't cause a void out. Neanderthals are not extinct. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are believed to share a common ancestor in the form of Homo heidelbergensis. Nailed it. There are clear differences between the two. Neanderthals were brutish and brawny, well equipped to hunt larger animals and survive in colder climates, whereas Homo sapiens were slender-limbed and only capable of hunting smaller prey. But as millennia passed, Homo sapiens learned to create tools and hunt in packs. The Neanderthals, who actually had larger brains than the Homo sapiens, also fashioned tools of their own. But these were crude in comparison, and developed little over 200,000 years. Perhaps because these simple-minded beings favoured small family units, so that even if a breakthrough occurred, it was unlikely to be shared with others. This isolation, more than any other factor, seems to have led to their decline. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, conceived religion, with which large numbers of individuals could be bound together in service to a common cause. Strength in numbers also made their communities more resistant to famine and other calamities. In other words, Homo sapiens grew stronger through interpersonal connections, by creating what came to be called society. If we persist in our divided state, we risk losing this hard-won unity and dooming ourselves to the Neanderthals' fate. We will dwindle and die, apart and alone. But history holds another intriguing lesson. Homo sapiens did not disdain Neanderthals. The two species even intermingled on occasion. Our DNA retains vestiges of our ancient cousins even now. So you see, while a species itself may disappear, its genetic legacy may yet endure. Hartman's theory of evolution. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto the land, their consciousness expanded to process the new realm that lay before them. But their development did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, and that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammals formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually, they came together in communities, and then larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time. And in order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the death stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the chiral network, which incorporates the beach, where time does not exist. Or consider timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact when we must cope with such irrational phenomena? Yet that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go as far as to say our conceptions of reality are under threat. How could they not be when our very eyes deny the invisible BT that stands before us? The stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution of consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. That is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as a means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the death stranding. Umbilical cords in Devonian-era fossils. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the death stranding and concerns the discovery of a 380 million year old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was a fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species? Materpiscus attenbergi. Oh, is that named after David Attenborough? I don't know, maybe. Attenbergi. It's a placiderm, an extinct class of armoured marine creatures that used to live in seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era, right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, one of the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we will be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and the death stranding. Bridgmanite in the Earth's mantle. Bridgmanite is a mineral. Bridgmanite is a mineral found in the lower part of the Earth's mantle. It was named in honor of the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Percy Williams Bridgman. Bridgmanite comprises 38% of the Earth, but because it is only found deep beneath the surface, it is very difficult to acquire any samples for analysis. As luck would have it, however, a material with the same properties was discovered inside a meteorite, before the death stranding, of course, meaning that a certain amount of research has already been conducted into this mysterious mineral, after a fashion. From this, a theory has been advanced, positing that Bridgmanite contains a certain amount of chiralium that was absorbed into the mineral at the moment of the Earth's creation. If this theory is true, then it may go some way to explaining the curious tar that has been observed to bubble up from below ground. Furthermore, if chiralium does indeed come from the other side, as we suspect, then it would follow that it has been linked to ours from the very beginning. In essence, the heart of the planet could be likened to the world of the dead. How appropriate given that the chiral clouds bind us to the surface forevermore. None may ascend to heaven when they die, for our final destination lies beneath our feet. Ashes to ashes, as they say. About the Dreamcatcher. There is a psychological framework which posits that the human personality is comprised of various strands. Our inner mind, our outer character. Each is a strand, or thread, made up of yet smaller threads which intertwine with others to make us who we are. And in nurturing each strand, we become better people, and inure ourselves against psychological harm, or so the theory goes. As odd as it may sound, this is not an entirely dissimilar concept to the one which lies behind that most ubiquitous of Ojibwe artifacts. He pronounced this word and I forgot how it was. It was like Weepji? Ojibwe? Not sure. The Dreamcatcher. You've seen them before, yes? A woven web of threads said to protect the mind from harm by trapping nightmares, thus ensuring that only pleasant dreams pass through. It is no coincidence that these charms came to symbolize the pan-Indian movement of the 20th century. The many and varied Native American tribes strove to set aside their differences in order to foster a group identity, a singular dream. As such, it came to symbolize what made them one people, what united them. In essence, strands can represent that which makes us who we are, that which differentiates us from what we are not, and the bonds we share with one another. Even the Dreamcatcher has meaning in the game. This is mental. Kipus. Kipu means not in the Quechua language. Objects given this name were used in ancient Incan society to record and transmit information. And yes, Amelie just so happens to wear one. The Inca would pass Kipu from one place to another via a network of messengers known as casquis. You might be surprised at the complexity that can be communicated through a simple system of knots, and not merely numerical data. It is said that whole histories could be contained in these intricate webs. Some theories suggest that they were ascribed magical properties too. Certain combinations of knotted numbers were thought to encourage the dead to sleep peacefully in their graves, for example. Thus we see that the Kipu is at once a tool for communication, storytelling, and ritual. About Sam's return. 1 week after Sam's return. Sam has returned, safe and sound. It had been about a month since he departed for Amelie's beach. 30 days of relentless searching for us, though for him it must have felt like an eternity. I cannot imagine the isolation and despair he must have been forced to endure, a suffering known only by Amelie and Bridget. Sam has told us about the extinction entity and how it granted humanity a reprieve, but beyond that, he is reluctant to speak. Well, we shall not put any pressure on him. Frankly, I expect we would struggle to comprehend anything else he tells us. Suffice it to say that the last stranding has been avoided, even if its precursor has forever shaped our world. Thousands and thousands of years from now, should intelligent life walk the earth and find our fossils, they will likely conclude that Homo sapiens died out in the 6th extinction. Perhaps, if we are lucky, they may even find records we leave behind. Still, we cannot hope to guess how much they will understand about who we were. After all, their intelligence will not be like ours. Theirs will be a different understanding of the world, of the universe. Different forms of existence, different conceptions of what it is to be alive. These invariably lead to different conceptions of what it is to die. But it matters not if they ever understand who we were. All that matters, in my opinion, at least, is that they know that we were here. Bridget needs Homo ludens. I've already spoken at length about the new varieties of man that have emerged in the wake of the chiral pollution and from the resulting phobias. Homo demens, Homo gestalt, not to mention those touched by dooms. This much is common knowledge. I, however, would posit that we could further categorise the humans of this day and age. Take our comrades Mama and Lochne, for example. They are creators, are they not? People who use tools to make things. Craftspeople, Homo faber. Consider Deadman, one who looks at the dead in their eyes every day, one who takes their organs as his own. His relationship with death is transcendental, sublime. It is, in essence, his faith, and he is a Homo religiosus. As for myself, Homo loquens, a linguist, one who seeks to understand this world through the language of science and logic. There is, however, another very special type of human, a breed that would serve Bridges rather well. Homo ludens, they who play. Be it deliberate or unintentional, Homo ludens unite people, creating culture, shaping the very world around them, not through violence, nor laws, nor prescriptions, but rather through metaphorical acts of play. I know of only one person who matches this description, the one they call the Great Deliverer, Sam Porter. Despite die-hardman's best efforts, however, his whereabouts are still unknown. I love a good play, me. Lochna and Molingnan. You know what we used to dream about? Seeing what's beyond those clouds up there. We've spent our whole lives beneath a chiralium sky. It's all we've ever known. But we also know that the world used to be so much bigger. Our parents told us they were researchers who worked for NASA, though these days most people wouldn't know what that was. It went up in smoke around the same time America did, and all our parents' work went with it. But we still have our dreams, the one thing our parents gave us that can never be taken away. Molingnan and I were named after a pair of craters left by meteors which struck the Earth 450 million years ago. Those craters are proof that this planet is part of something bigger, that we exist within a vast, interconnected universe. Our names serve as a reminder of this fundamental truth, symbols of our parents' hope that our isolation is only temporary. That's why we joined Bridges, too, to bring the people of this country together again, and to one day reunite this planet with the greater universe that surrounds it. Interview with the geologist. I remember that it was just before I joined the expedition when I found those documents in Bridges HQ, research papers that predated the death Stranding. People used to believe that dinosaurs had gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period, 65 million years ago. But when this fellow investigated various locations where late Cretaceous dino fossils had been found, he came to the startling conclusion that there were hardly any evidence anywhere on Earth that supported the theory that dinosaurs had survived until the end of the Cretaceous. In other words, almost all of them had been wiped out long before that. The only place where there were fossils that did support the traditional theory was here in North America, which suggested that this was the last part of the Earth to have been inhabited by dinosaurs. Not everyone agreed with this analysis at the time, but let's say he had it right. That would mean that there is evidence of a mass extinction hidden here, right beneath our feet. Evidence which could prove invaluable in understanding the one on our horizon. Did the dinosaurs who happen to live here just get lucky? Or is there something special about this place that allowed them to survive? I'd love to get to the bottom of it, but I'm not sure I have what it takes. I'm not like Hartman. I don't have dooms or any other unique traits. Still, I want to make myself useful. I want to research the Stranding and help uncover the truth behind it. That's why I joined the expedition team after all. Interview with the paleontologist. In the period since the very first forms of life arose here on Earth, the planet has witnessed a number of mass extinctions. And as you are no doubt aware, the most significant of these are known as the Big Five. The first marked the end of the Ordovician period, while the next, at the end of the Devonian period, wiped out almost marine life. But the third of these extinction, at the end of the Permian period around 250 million years ago, was even worse. 96% of all marine organisms and 70% of land organisms died as a result. The fourth extinction finished off most large reptiles, though the dinosaurs managed to hold on until the fifth came along at the end of the Cretaceous period, 65 million years ago. We humans are evolved from the small mammals which managed to survive that particular catastrophe. Each of these 5 extinctions resulted from enormous changes to the natural environment. Species which were unable to adapt to these changes perished, while those which were ideally suited to evolve and thrive did just that. Evidence from records which predate the Death Stranding indicate that many scholars believed a 6th mass extinction was on its way, or that it may have already begun. There was something of a consensus regarding its cause as well, humanity's destruction of the environment. This led them to sound the alarm, warning the world of what was at stake. At the time, the greatest minds of the era believed that if the ecosystem could be preserved, and if humanity could learn to live in harmony with nature, then a future could be secured for all the world's species, humans included. But that was then, and this is now. If the phenomenon we are currently experiencing is indeed the 6th extinction, then it must be acknowledged that humanity is its main target. Is this divine punishment for our misdeeds? If so, then I suppose there is little that can be done. Perhaps there is no way forward for humanity now. Nevertheless, I refuse to give up. I will endeavour to find hope in our predicament. Bit grim. Bit grim, that. Interview with the Avo-Devo biologist. I was born after the Death Stranding, so my conception of what the world once was is derived entirely from documents, photographs, and video. We didn't have to use timefall. We didn't used to have timefall, for one, just regular rain. No chiral clouds, only the traditional masses of suspended moisture. And one certainly didn't have to worry about tar bubbling up from underground, in most locales. Humans could travel anywhere, even into space, and we were blissfully unaware of the beach's existence. Suffice it to say, there is no doubt that this is a period of sweeping change that will have lasting repercussions for all life on Earth. Given that, dooms may simply be humanity's way of trying to adapt and survive. A beach exists within the consciousness of every individual, but these environmental changes, they affect all life on a genetic level, do they not? This is why I thought to investigate them. And the medium through which I chose to do so is the tar, which has become so ubiquitous. But you're not interested in that, I am sure. So you know, there's a very real possibility that we have already failed to adapt to the sixth extinction. That we are but another evolutionary dead end soon to be left behind. If that is the case, then it could be reasoned that the ones afflicted with dooms, and therefore blessed with an enhanced perception of the beach, are our successors who will survive and supplant us. I suppose that would be a shame, but it doesn't trouble me all that much. My research will survive me as well, and the doom sufferers can pick up where I left off. They will carry on my genetic lineage too, for that matter. No, what worries me is that not even dooms will prove sufficient to endure this extinction. If that is the case, then humanity is doomed. It's certainly a possibility that we have to acknowledge. But more than that, one question looms above all. Why? Why now? Why like this? That's what I want to know more than anything. Somehow I doubt the dinosaurs and all the other species that came and went ever considered that question. Worrying over the reason for this and that is a uniquely human condition, I suppose. Yet this idle curiosity may be the key to understanding and overcoming the stranding. Tar bubbles up from the beach. I'd heard this area was pretty inhospitable before I got here. Got your fair share of mountains, obviously, and on top of that there were all these rumours about a secret terrorist base or something. So I figured I was in for a bad time. But when me and the team got here, yeah, it was way worse than what we thought. Felt like we could get jumped any second, you know? I'll tell you what though, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw all of the tar out west. Wondered how the hell Amelie and her team made it through. But someone said it wasn't nearly as bad when they made the trip. I was sent out to take a closer look, and man, it was something else. And it hadn't been that long either. Hard to imagine all that bubbled up damn near overnight. Honestly, I felt like I was standing on the edge of the world. We don't know much about the tar, except that it wasn't here around before the stranding. Same as timefall and chiralium. There's some speculation that it might be some byproduct of the beach, and that if you could somehow retrace the flow, you'd end up there. But that's all theoretical stuff. Right now, we've got a practical problem to deal with. One of the chiral relays we built is at risk of going under any moment. We don't have the manpower to relocate it yet, but we should once the second expedition shows up. Whether we can wait that long is another question though. Maybe you could tell them to get their asses in gear, if you get the chance. Antimatter in storage. Everything went like clockwork, and we recovered all of the antimatter. Performed the requested maintenance on the magnetic trap, too. It should be a bit more stable now. I still can't believe those amateurs managed to get their hands on the stuff, though. Apparently they stumbled across it while researching chiral clouds, though I suppose that makes kind of sense. Even before the Death Stranding, there was evidence that regular lightning storms could generate antimatter, and chiral ones are surely stranger. Sounds like they were only able to capture it once, though, so that's something. Imagine if antimatter was easy to get hold of. Terrorists would have a field day. Anyway, we've got it stored safely now, and no one's the wiser. I just hope something good comes of it. That's all. You know what the alternative is, Lochner. I don't know, death? Prepper interview. The photographer. It wasn't that long ago that we moved to this shelter, the three of us. Before that, we used to live in the city, until my husband said that we had to go leave. He was so insistent that I didn't have any choice but to go along with it. I couldn't take care of our daughter by myself. He said that he was sick of city life, and I can't say I don't understand it at all. I mean, timefall may not have been an issue, or BTs, but I can see how a safe and comfortable life might become suffocating. Our daughter might be happy and healthy, but we're the exception. Hardly anyone's having children these days. You don't need a crystal ball to see where the world is headed. My husband says we're bound for extinction, says nobody's doing anything about it. People would rather stick their heads in the sand and try to wait out the storm. If we don't figure out the Death Stranding and fix this world of ours, that's all she wrote. My husband says that a lot. That maybe he's just a guy with a camera, but at least he's doing something, and so on. He's out again somewhere, investigating something. Recently he started taking our daughter with him, teaching her to take photos of rocks and murals and the like. I'm glad they're spending time together, and I know it's good for her education. But I still hate it when they go out and leave me here to wait, and pray that they come home safe and sound. That was only a year ago. Prepper interview. The Mountaineer. People aren't meant to stay cooped up inside or live in one place forever. It's not natural. Exploration is in our DNA. The great outdoors is where we're supposed to be. You know, our ancestors started out in Africa, right? Well, they didn't just stay there, did they? They wanted to try and find a better life, a better home. That's why humanity spread all across the planet. And as we've travelled, we've evolved. Little by little, we've grown tougher and smarter. Even our immune systems have become stronger. But if we stop moving, stop exploring, that all stops too. We stagnate as a species, maybe even regress. That's why we can't hole up in the cities. There's a whole universe beyond those chiral clouds that I'd love to explore someday. But if that's not possible, then I want to at least get as close as I can. Climb the biggest mountains, go as high as I can go, and try to see what lies beyond. And I want to do it with the love of my life, the world-class mountaineer who's showed me the beauty of this place, my guiding star. Together, there's no peak we can't summit. The Spiritualist. No one has been able to explain the Death Stranding, and I doubt that anyone ever will. Certainly not with science. Science is only suitable for observation, measurement, objectivity. You can observe and measure as much as you like, but it will bring you no closer to an understanding. Sometimes you need to expand your mind and open your heart. Seek the souls of the dead. Listen for the waves on the beach. In antiquity, there were no barriers between the realms. People moved freely between the earth, outer space, and the world of the dead. What are myths and legends if not records of these journeys? My research has only confirmed this. The pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica, the Nazcan lines, Stonehenge, all gateways built by humans in order to access the beach. Surely you can see that the wisdom of the ancients has never been more relevant. The Doctor. I know what you're thinking. Why is this prepper claiming to be a doctor? Don't worry, you're not the first. Rest assured that I really am a doctor. I even have a medical license, though the governing body that issued it to me is long gone, so I won't be offended if that counts for little. But license or not, people still need doctors. Preppers get sick too, you know. That's not so hard for you to get your head around, is it? Most folks haul themselves to a city hospital when there's something wrong. But out in the boonies, that's not really an option. We can't just leave those people to die. You know full well what would follow. And so I do what I can to help. Around here, I'm the only one people can rely on to keep them alive. Whenever I'm needed, I try to find someone to transport me to a patient's residence, but that's hardly the most efficient approach, and it doesn't endear me to the porters either. I've heard that Bridges is trying to bring everyone into their chiral network. If it's as good as I've heard, it would be a real game changer. I could perform all sorts of diagnoses and even some treatments without having to leave my shelter. I hope you manage to extend it here soon. There's a lot of people out there counting on us both. Notice how it says Higgs's journal now. It just said someone's journal before. Oh, we got more. Oh, journal number 24. So there's been some time since number 9. My first memory is of looking up at the ceiling of our shelter as a baby, bawling my eyes out. All of a sudden, the hand of God comes into view, blotting out the steel sky. Daddy lifts me up, not gentle, but not hard. Shouts some stuff, but it's all gibberish I can't make heads or tails of. He ain't my real daddy, though. That one died before I was born, and Mama soon after. Of disease or something, I don't know. Her brother took me in, whisked me away from that shelter reeking of piss and death, and brought me here. Daddy number 2. He never really took to it. He was an ugly, violent man, full of anger with nowhere to go. Tried to love me, in his own way, but I don't know if he ever had it in him. Daddy told me our shelter was our world, and I believed him. I grew up thinking that no one but the 2 of us existed. Then, when I got a little older, I started asking questions. Simple questions about where the food came from, that kind of thing. Got smacked upside the head for my troubles, but try as he might, he couldn't beat the curiosity out of me. One day I peeked at his monitor. It was the first glimpse I'd ever caught of the outside world. I pestered Daddy about it, and you can bet I caught holy hell for it. But I wore him down, and eventually he came clean and admitted that there was a whole world out there, soaked to the bone by timefall and overrun by demons that'd eat me up. It occurred to me later that this fear-mongering probably got my mama killed, filling her head with his hysterics about the dead walking the earth, and the only safe haven being 6 feet under. Number 25. My mama entrusted me to her brother, so he had no choice but to raise me best he could. Say what you will about the man, but he had himself a sense of obligation. Might have even harboured a measure of affection for me, but whatever was in his heart, he expressed with his hands, his fists. Any hopes and dreams he might have had for me, for us, fell by the wayside pretty quick. We slipped into a daily routine of warnings to stay the heck inside, bookended by beatings to drive the point home. I think sometimes he sincerely believed that was the only way to protect me. I wasn't about to go on living like that. Can't cage a young boy's spirit. If I'd stayed, I'd have died, body and soul. I had to get out. Started hoarding supplies in secret, but he caught on. That was the beginning of the worst beating yet. He was grabbing anything and everything within reach that could be used as a weapon, tearing our shelter apart, smashing furniture, all the while wailing like a wounded animal, tears streaming down his face. He pinned me down, tears and spit flying in my face as he blubbered on about me not understanding his pain. His heckin' pain! His hands around my neck, darkness creeping in from the corners. His heckin' pain! His heckin' pain! The kitchen knife in my hands, in his neck. His hands. His heckin' hands! They grow weak, and he just deflates, like a balloon, all over me. I roll him off and I look into his glassy eyes, filled with heckin' pain, and our steel sky. I didn't know how to feel after. I spent the night next to him, my mind a blank canvas. In the back of it, a nagging voice saying that I had to dispose of it. Daddy hadn't told me much, but he had told me about how the bodies would go necro, pop BTs and all that. Made for a good bedtime story. So I knew what would happen if I let him lie. Death had come into our home and turned it into a crater. His stink was starting to fill up the room. I had to deal with him, had to get him out, get him as far away as possible. So I got my arms under his and dragged him out into a new world with a new sky. Bigger, emptier, bare rock dotted with bushes all around. Mountains, heckin' mountains, off in the distance. Chiral clouds hugging their peaks. My knees started getting wobbly and the world began to spin. But I knew the clock was ticking. Eyes down, gotta deal with Daddy. I'd been moving at a steady clip when I saw it. Chiralium coming off Daddy. Little motes of shimmering light. I was out of time. I laid him down in the dirt, but before I let go, I had a vision. My hands, still resting on his body, disappeared. Vaporized into a fine mist. Poof. And then I felt another presence. A BT. Coming slow, but sure. Like it had been walking since the beginning of time. Daddy's keeper. That was the first one I'd sensed, but it wasn't the last. For a long while after, I remained awakened to their presence. A sixth sense. Daddy's parting gift to me. Over time it'd fade, but I knew how I'd got it. and I knew how to get it back. All I needed was another body, and I got real good at making them. Death for life, theirs for mine. A fair exchange. Lucy's report concerning the void out in the satellite town of UCA-01-002 near central Knot City. UCA-01-032 has been wiped off the map by a void out, leaving nothing but an enormous crater. Terrorism was suspected at first, but the investigation spearheaded by Bridges quickly ruled out that possibility, and eventually concluded that the cause was the corpse of a civilian who had been left to necrotize, unnoticed, in an urban residential area. The deceased was Lucy Strand. Tragically, she was also 7 months pregnant. The child had already been named Lou. Cause of death was ruled a drug overdose, possibly intentional, though that remains unconfirmed at this time. Surveillance data was sent to Bridges HQ for analysis, but the results were inconclusive. Lucy's husband, Sam Strand, had been away for some time, and became concerned when he was unable to contact his wife. Though he attempted to return home, the void out was triggered immediately after his arrival. Being a repatriate, Sam was the sole survivor of the blast. As the deceased was the wife of a prominent member of Bridges, who himself is the son of President Strand, public support for the organisation suffered. Many criticised the crisis management team's handling of the situation, as well as the priorities of the organisation and President Strand herself. Some believed that Sam Strand was involved with his wife's death, and that he should be held to account. While both the administration and Bridges adamantly defended him for a time, public pressure continued to mount. In a gesture his co-workers suspect was his way of taking responsibility, Sam Strand resigned from Bridges. His current whereabouts are unknown. Report number 1. I've just concluded my first therapy session with Sam Strand. It was not held at the patient's request. Sam's adopted mother, President Strand, approached me in the hope that I might help her son overcome his aphenphosphobia. Sam is an intriguing case, his reluctance notwithstanding. He recognises that his condition has and will continue to cause him much distress. I suspect it is rooted in a childhood trauma, but unfortunately we have only just scratched the surface, and I cannot begin to speculate what it might be. Like many of the Bridges core team members, Sam is a doomed sufferer. Unlike them, however, he is also a repatriate. Whether or not this is related to his aphenphosphobia, I cannot say at this time, but he would hardly be the first to manifest phobias as a result of his abilities. As an infant, Sam lost both parents and was adopted by President Strand. Owing to her stressful and time-consuming responsibilities, I can only presume that she was unable to afford him sufficient attention, which is to say that a distant relationship with his adoptive mother may be a contributing factor. As previously mentioned though, Sam is very reluctant to talk about himself. He is an intensely private individual, and it will take time to build trust and convince him to open himself up to me. Report number 2. Progress has been slow, but Sam has finally started to open up to me. However, his recollection of early childhood is confused and contradictory. He has difficulty distinguishing between genuine memories and reoccurring dreams. Sam even claims to have met his stepsister Amelie on the beach several times while quite young, an impossible claim to say the least. I'm only a little older than Sam, but I was born before the death stranding, a fact that tends to affect the way that we think about the beach. In my professional opinion, the beach is a figment of our collective imagination, a shared delusion, but people born later are more likely to take its existence as a given. I wonder if they find comfort in the belief because it helps to explain phenomena like BTs and repatriates like Sam. Similarly, my theory is that Sam's manufactured childhood memories of the beach are his way of coping with the fact that neither Amelie nor Bridget spent much time with him. I believe this is also the reason he still clings to the dream catcher that Amelie gave him even now as an adult. You could call it his security blanket. It may also be the key to overcoming his aphenphosphobia. If Sam were to emotionally distance himself from Amelie, it might reduce his resistance to physical intimacy. I will propose this approach to him in our next session. Number 8. A few days after the incident in my office, I tendered my resignation. A classic case of counter-transference. The therapist getting emotionally involved with their client. and there was no way my professional pride would permit me to continue working. I felt guilty, of course. There's a permanent shortage of therapists, and many of my clients will struggle to find help elsewhere. But after what happened with Sam, I didn't see any other option. To be honest, I'd already come to terms with it. What I'm doing for Sam more than makes up for it. I'd never normally use this word, but I really do believe that his apophosophobia has been cured. He's shown so much progress that, absent an extremely traumatic experience, I doubt his symptoms will ever return. To my surprise, the President didn't have any problems with our relationship. If anything, she was pleased. I suppose this means I'll soon be joining the Strand family, together with this new life that's growing inside of me. Oh, oh man. Oh. Lissy was his wife. My bad, I forgot that. She was his therapist. Whew. From the report on the void out in Manhattan. Number 1. Who the hell? Those were the doctor's final words. At the time, no one knew to whom he was referring, and to be fair, there were more pressing issues at hand. The doctor in question was a surgeon specialising in caesarean sections. The procedure he was undertaking at the time, however, was slightly unusual, in that he was operating on a mother who had been declared brain dead 7 months into her pregnancy. She had been placed on life support, but since her blood pressure was decreasing and the fetus was showing signs of bradycardia, the decision was made to operate. Because the procedure was broadcast to medical researchers on a closed-circuit network, we are fortunate to have a record of what took place. Per the footage, the incision was made without incident. The plan was apparently to remove the fetus from the womb and immediately place it in an NICU, where it would receive the necessary care. Prior to this, the surgeon would of course have to cut the umbilical cord. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment the surgeon's hand touched the cord. In that instant, he uttered his infamous last words. Who the hell? Number 2. Following a number of tests and experiments, the conclusion was reached that this incident was an annihilation event brought about by the doctor's contact with whatever... Sorry. Following a number of tests and experiments, the conclusion was reached that this incident was an annihilation event brought about by the doctor's contact with whatever, or whomever, he had seen upon touching the umbilical cord. Though it eventually became apparent that the doctor had been referring to BTs, at the time no one could explain the underlying cause of the incident. Some later theorized that if the same conditions, brain-dead mother, fetus, umbilical cord, could be recreated, then BTs could be detected and the mystery of the death stranding could be solved. Indeed, this was the theoretical basis upon which the government's own experiments and investigations would be conducted. They called the fetuses they used bridge babies, and the experiments became known as the BB experiments. Soon after the government's program got underway, the tragedy of Manhattan occurred. Number 3. The BB experiments were conducted at a Manhattan-based government facility in such extreme secrecy that little is known about them to this day. One thing that we do know for certain, however, is that the experiments ended in tragic failure, and were directly responsible for the total annihilation of the island of Manhattan, as well as the death of the president, who had been observing operations firsthand. He was succeeded by the then Vice President Bridget Strand, who shortly after her inauguration put an end to all further BB experiments and had all data destroyed. With her strong and steadfast leadership in the wake of the void out, she made great strides in quelling the chaos and unrest that had spread throughout the nation. She vowed to rebuild America and devoted herself wholeheartedly to this end. In response, separatists who opposed Reconstruction emerged and steadily grew more aggressive in their activities. One faction even managed to acquire documents relating to the BB experiments, and some speculate that this data was then used to restart them in secret. At that time, however, no BB units are known to have successfully been created, and BBs in general remained a taboo subject in government circles. It's really interesting reading all this now after obviously now we know Now we know all the mysteries and all the stuff. I don't think I found any more like memory logs, so I'm gonna like go out and try and find all them. Try and maybe get the platinum. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. A little bit of a longer one. I hope you've enjoyed finding out about the UCA and the Muricas and the BTs and the BBs and the heckin' giant fish on the table. Thank you once again for watching and supporting this series, and I will see you in the next one. Have an awesome day.